We come together this morning to remind each other to rest in this moment, to take time to look into each other's eyes and see there a holy communion. We come in with love, hope, a desire for connection and meaning. Let us find that in each other's eyes and beings and presence this morning. Let love be what is shared between us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Ed Novak, and you are welcome to use the pronouns he and him for me. Welcome to All Souls Church Unitarian. We're all people of all races, national origins, creeds, gender identities and expressions, sexual orientations, ages, and abilities. Where all people are welcome at the table of love and fellowship. We gather in person and on Zoom from around the world. If you're visiting our sanctuary for the first time, or if you still feel a little new here, maybe you could raise your hand or let the folks know in the Zoom chat so that we can give you an All Souls welcome. Are there visitors The connection card in your order of service or in the Zoom chat is our means of staying connected with you. Each week it will offer new opportunities for us to stay connected with each other. You can consider the invitations on the card throughout the service, and our ushers will collect them during the offering. We particularly appreciate visitors filling in your mailing address so that we can send you a gift. Today, we honor the legacies of both indigenous and enslaved peoples at this international crossroads now called Washington, D.C. For generations, Piscataway tribes have been the traditional caretakers of our bioregion. These people of the waters lived along the Anacostia and Potomac rivers. Our church has occupied 3 sites on stolen Native American lands within unjust systems that continue to benefit from Black and immigrant labor. The heritage of all these ancestors is still here in this region and in our community. Our commitments to beloved community and our 8th principle set an intention to educate ourselves and take action to repair harm. As we benefited directly and materially from stolen land and labor, the descendants of this wrong can benefit directly and materially from our time, talents, and treasure. The All Souls Social Justice Ministry is working to show us a path forward. Now, I invite you to greet one another. On Zoom, we invite you to open up Gallery View, turn your video on, and give everyone a wave. In the sanctuary, feel free to get up and move around as you are comfortable. When you hear the bells toll, you are welcome to return to your pews. Now is the time to greet one another. bong. Bong, 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 bong. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. That is the new call back to your pews. We're so glad you're here with us today, online and in person. After the service, please join us in Pierce Hall for refreshments and conversation, or stay on Zoom to gather with one another. Again, welcome to All Souls.
My name is Laura Prophet, and I'm the Director of Religious Education and having issues with the microphone, sorry. Today is the first day of RE for this new RE year. I'm excited. We've done a lot to get ready. I think it'll be fun. But we're also going to do something today called the blessing of the backpacks, or your laptops, or a pencil, or a calculator, or your hands, or anything you might use this year when you're learning. Unitarian Universalists like us believe that no one ever stops learning. School is not the only place we learn. In fact, our UU principles and values encourage us to imagine new ideas and learn from each other every day of our entire lives. Everyone has something to teach us. Being open to learning and changing the way we think about something is one of the things that makes Unitarian Universalism so unique. While we'll be blessing our learners today, we also want to recognize our RE volunteers. These are the folks who give their time and energy with our RE participants. They're an introduction to the Unitarian Universalist community and, along with parents, provide the support and encouragement young UUs need to live their lives. So let's take a moment to say thank you to our volunteers. If you're volunteering with RE this year, could you take a moment and stand or raise your hand or wave so that we can appreciate your work?
Woo! 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 And I'm Reverend Anastasia Zinke, your developmental minister. I use she, her pronouns. And I wanted to explain a little bit about why this is such a special thing to do this blessing today. It's so special because we want to give you our blessings. What is a blessing? I understood this better this week when I came home kind of late on Thursday, and my son Benjamin came like halfway down the stairs to meet me, and he goes, "Mommy, there's a book called Felix's Bucket, and it's about how you have a bucket, but every time like a mean thing happens or a sad thing happens, a drop goes out of your bucket." And he said, "My bucket is low today." And today with this blessing, what we're doing is adding water to your bucket. Now the water that we'll put on your hands or in your backpack or it'll bless you with is from our water communion. So it is pretty special water. And what that means is that when the water disappears, the blessing stays. It kind of is always there to make your bucket a little bit more full. And if anyone here ever feels like their bucket is low, you could always come here to get more blessings to help make your bucket more full for the next week or month or year. So in that spirit, I invite all of us to participate in this blessing, knowing we bless the water communion by coming up. I love people who show up early. If you are going to school this year, kindergarten through graduate school, preschoolers are welcome, anyone in pre-K, anyone taking classes, graduate school, seminarians. And I want good listening for a second. You could come to either Reverend Rob or I, and then you're gonna either go line up to go to your RE classes or file back to your pews. What's your name?
Jonah.
Jonah. May your mind be open.
Morning, all. I am Reverend Rob Keithan. I use he, him pronouns, and I serve as your minister of social justice. Now is a great time to pull out your connection card so you can express your interest in an event or let us know how you're doing. There are two things happening today that I want to call your attention to. The first is the design charrette for the courtyard, which probably brings to mind the question, what on earth is a charrette? The answer is that a charrette is a method of collaborative design in which stakeholders deliberate on a project or issue in order to resolve conflicts and plan solutions. Today's charrette, it is a fun word to say, is a session with the architects on how we will redesign our courtyard space after the water mitigation efforts are complete. That starts at 12:30 in the dining room. Also, charrette. The other invitation for today is from the Young Souls, our affinity group for people ages 18 to 35-ish, for the first in a new series of monthly mindful meetups. I'll be in person tonight from 5 to 7 p.m. Do we have a location on that? All right, Columbia Heights. We'll get that on the calendar item on the website. People just know that it's happening. That feels good. It'll be on the website. Looking further ahead, here's a final invitation to sign up for our Transformative Leadership Day here at the church on Saturday, September 21st. It will be a fun, interactive opportunity to learn from and with each other. Everyone is welcome, and we especially encourage folks in church leadership or considering church leadership to attend. It is free, but registration is required. And after next week's worship, all are invited to attend an in-person conversation with Reverend Anastasia about congregational covenants. More info and registration for all these events are on the church calendar. And last but not least, if you're not already engaged in getting into good trouble with our READ project for voting rights, we encourage all of you to take the Democracy Pledge to fight voter suppression and get out the vote. You can click the link to do so on the banner at the top of the website.
Postcarding party today.
And there's a postcarding party today. We turn now to congregational care. This week we send love, light, and prayers to the following members of our All Souls community. We start with the family and friends of long-term member Dr. Greg Edwards, who died this past week. We hope to learn more in the coming weeks about the circumstances surrounding his passing and plans to celebrate his life. If you knew Dr. Edwards, we would welcome your reflections on his life and tenure at All Souls. Feel free to reach out to me. We send love as well to Janet and Jack Powers as Jack prepares for extensive surgery to remove large kidney stones this coming Wednesday. Janet writes, "We're both anxious and nervous and appreciate positive energy and prayers." And Nabil Ashur, Katrina Weber Ashur, and Zaina Ashur, who share this sorrowful update and solemn request. Our family in Jenin, Palestine, is increasingly facing fear, lack of electricity, scarcity, violence, and threats. Pray for them, act for them. In the silence that follows, please speak aloud or write into the chat the names you carry on your hearts this morning. I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer. Our words this morning are my humanist interpretation of the Lord's Prayer. O sacred existence, we marvel at the vast and varied universe. From wonders on earth to the glory of the stars, we are grateful for life. May we treat other beings as they wish to be treated, seeking always to be just, yet remembering our capacity for evil. May we find right relationship with our own beautiful and perfect selves, with our human community, and with all that is. Amen.
Amen. I wanted to share with you a golden nugget I received last year when I was bolstering my right relationship skills. It comes from a colleague of mine, Reverend Erica Barron, who is a member of our Unitarian Universalist Association's Northeast Regional Staff Team. That area noticed that a number of congregations were experiencing conflict. And they decided to form a group from 5 congregations to form a learning cohort to see how things could go better. They met for 5 Saturdays over the course of a year. One of the things that the staff started to notice, just in the way people talked, nobody actually said this sentence out loud because it is a level of consciousness deeper than words. There lay an assumption. You could either be in conflict or you could be in covenant, but you couldn't be in both at the same time. Let me say that again or rephrase it just for emphasis. This assumption means, if this was true, that whenever there was conflict, we have fallen out of covenant. Now, it's not like, again, this was exactly clear in people's heads, and maybe it felt a little bit more ambiguous. Like somehow we have lost covenant. Like it was there to find, we just don't know where we put it. And part of then the job is like getting back into covenant because that's where we need to be. And the way to do that is to get rid of this conflict thing, either by barreling through it or ignoring it or just somehow making it go away, with the optimal word being fast. Now, most UUs, though maybe not those in the DC or New York City areas, are conflict averse. And if you are one of those typical UUs, you will recognize that you carry this assumption perhaps within you, coming from your families and the communities that you were raised. But I want to name that there is another form beyond our personal styles or our community styles, that this delineation between conflict and covenant, another delineation that this shows up in. And it is in our worship of the written word. And yes, worship of the written word is one of the features in white supremacy culture as defined by Tima Kuhn and Kenneth Jones in their work, helping us understand how that shows up. What has happened, and I see this across UU congregations, is we start to think of our written covenants as contracts. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I know that there are some in our congregations. And one of the things that they shared with me is that there's this area of contract law. Again, not a lawyer. But when you go into contract law and you're merging 2 parties, you make certain agreements. I will do this, and you will do that, and then we will be like this. But if one party does this and the other party does not do this, then the contract is null and void. There is no thing between them. And sometimes that's how we think of covenants. I showed up as my best self. You showed up as someone I don't want to talk to. We're not in covenant with one another. But covenants are not like contracts. They're a vow, an intention, a promise. And our relationship is not like a corporate merger. It is like a relationship of sharing your life with someone, much more comparable to a marriage. So here's a question for anyone who has been married. You don't have to raise your hand. Especially if you're sitting next to your spouse. When you got into a hypothetical fight, did you now think, well, that marriage is now done? You weren't like unmarried right in the heat of the fight or when you went to your separate rooms. You were still married. You still had that covenantal relationship. Much more needs to occur than a conflict to end a covenant. So, Reverend Barron and her colleagues looked for another understanding. And what they offer to us is that we think instead of our written covenants like a map to the covenant. The written covenant is like a map to the covenant. And our spiritual covenant is the landscape that the map describes. The written covenant helps us understand where to go, where we are, what we're seeing, what might be coming around the bend. It is a map to guide us. And we at All Souls have developed a map to guide us. It is our covenant of right relationship, and it is in your hands or in your chat feed right now. There's a QR code to it. And I invite you, maybe not while I'm giving my sermon, to open it up and read it, because it does help us know how to navigate the landscape of the covenant between us. It is a wonderful synthesis of lessons that we learned through our own conflicts here. But it is also really interesting how similar it is to a much more ancient covenant in our tradition called the Cambridge Platform, dating back to 1648. That covenant describes how a community will be together and organize itself, and how the covenant, the way we are with one another, should also shape how we make decisions and choose leaders together. It is both the source of our governance and our source of our spiritual map. And I want to talk about the first congregation who developed this covenantal language in our faith. It was the Dedham Church, starting in 1637. Now, here are some things that I think are useful to understand about Dedham in 1637. It was a pretty random opportunity. What happened is there were settlers who wanted land, and they put a little application in to get some land, and 70 names got pulled out of a hat, and there they went off to this land that they said would become the township of Dedham. And they did the things that they needed to do. They built some houses, they built a town hall, church, center, uni building, they plotted their farms, and they looked around and they realized, we haven't even really met. It's not like they wanted to move there together, they just showed up, kind of like we did this morning. And so they said, how will we form a church? How will we form a community? And they knew then the only place to begin was getting to know one another. And so they began meeting for 3 hours every week. 3 hours, really to get to know one another. And they took that time to really listen. So meeting one another and getting to know one another is the very first step. But I imagine once you get to know one another, something else begins to happen. you begin to share what else happened in your week. What was a real struggle? We know similar struggles in our life, and we experience these times of empathy. Someone had something to celebrate, and it was like, this is great news for our whole community. I'm right there with you. Sometimes someone was waiting on the edge, not knowing which way something would go. And I hope that the prayers of their community accompany them in that time of frightful waiting. I hope and imagine back in Dedham that they discovered that when you're in covenant, the nature and the tenor of our relationships should be one where we're invested in each other's well-being, as well as our mutual well-being altogether. The other thing that was really significant that was happening was that the Dedham Church was being founded in a larger context of conflict. And I mean like real conflict. And I love how covenanting was actually their response to conflict. So here are the conflicts that were going on. Many of them were religious refugees coming from Europe, where they faced significant persecution, physical violence for their beliefs. Even though they had landed on these colonial shores, they still feared that same violence. We were still a colony under that same imperial force, and people were persecuted at that time in England for doing many of the same things that our churches were trying to do here. They thought it was just a matter of time. So they were trying to thread a line. They wanted religious liberty, and they wanted to make sure that the real threats out there didn't escalate to a level of conflict that their very lives and communities would be threatened. So they thought, we need to be like well organized and have a sense of decorum and not cause too much fuss. And I'd say, even though Unitarian Universalists like to be rabble-rousers, cause good trouble, we also sometimes look towards and compare ourselves to the mainstream. We want our successful churches to look like other successful churches. And there's something there we need to be thoughtful about, how much we're conforming to the majority culture. So here's what's interesting to me in this, is that they wanted to balance they understood that in a free church, they needed to balance forbearance with engagement. They understood that no member of a free church is to be cast out for dissent on some proposition. Rather, which meant you could disagree with the church. You could ask questions, you could, even argue that the way that the group wanted to go wasn't the way you thought it should go. And the reason why they held on to that dissent is because they'd literally seen community members, friends, even family members pulled away and taken for voicing such dissent back in Europe. They knew that that's not the way they wanted it to go. But nor could they let a dissenting member ruin, create so much conflict that would threaten the church as a whole. And so they said it was only a persistent refusal to engage with forbearance, would be the only reason for removing any member from the roll. What is this forbearance? The Dedham's Church said, this is what this looks like. If a member's actions or their attitude, they like to use a member's carriage, seems scornful or sarcastic or sullen or ungenerous, he or she would be called upon the next afternoon by an elder to clear things. Elders would help them understand how to stay in relationship even as they dissented. And they would say, let's talk about this. They use the word, reason together in love for as long as is needed. As long as we're reasoning in love with one another, we can continue the conversation. It was when the loving stopped that they felt like the covenant stopped. So forbearance is patience and tolerance. It's understanding, getting to know someone well enough you could kind of forgive the little quirks of their personality. It's self-regulating, understanding why someone is getting under your skin so very much. It's not responding to provocation. And there were spiritual practices then and now that could help with this. This church actually helped me as a young adult in this practice. Now, I had taken a spiritual practice class here, and at the time, I was really struggling with my boss. She drove me crazy. And if she were here, she would definitely know that this song was about her. And I had tried a whole bunch of things. I tried managing up, I tried shifting the way I was doing things, nothing was working. And then I thought, I'll try this practice I got at All Souls. And if there's anyone who comes to your mind right now, you could do this right now even, but I closed my eyes and I pictured her as fully as I could. What did her face look like? What was her hair, her whole body, the clothes she'd like to wear, what posture she's in? I got a really clear idea of what she looked like. And then I thought about all the things I knew about her that weren't about what she looked like. How she was a really dedicated mother, how, from what she described, her husband was really patient with her and how she loved him from it. How their second experience with pregnancy was a very scary one, long waited for and hard come by. I thought about all the experiences she had told me about her career, the struggles and the celebrations, the hopes. I thought about, in addition to all the things that really frustrated me about her, how she also tried to protect me and looked out for me. And then I thought, what is the love that I know in my life and my heart? And how can I offer that to her? And imagined that love surrounding her. And I did that practice as often as I needed to go into work and be with her and practice forbearance and listening as much as I needed to. Because covenants are spiritual practices. We have to do the spiritual work, not just the actions, the behavioral work of a covenant. And so, my dear ones, I invite you to remember that we can be together in love and in harmony, and we could be together in love and in conflict. And this is what the legacy of our ancestral covenants remind us of, And may this be the living legacy that is true amongst us here today. May it be so, and amen.
Charette. Okay, back to the communication card, which our ushers will collect during the offering. I cordially invite you to turn your attention to the reflection question on the card. This week, Reverend Anastasia is inviting us to reflect on this question. How can our covenant help you when you experience disagreement or conflict? As the music plays, you're invited to contemplate and reflect on how you would answer this question. When reflecting upon today's question about covenant and conflict, I thought about perfection, specifically in terms of what happens when we fall short of perfection. If you read the bicentennial history of All Souls, you will be confronted with a litany of imperfections scattered throughout our 200-plus years of history. Broken promises, failed vows, and bad choices litter our legacy. Disappointments that every church, every human institution experiences from time to time. Many of you in the pews and on Zoom, including me, have experienced some of these imperfections. But we are still here. Why are we still here? I can't answer that for you, but maybe you have answered that question in the connection card. I'm still here because I want all souls to recover from everything that has been thrown at us in recent years, including our self-inflicted wounds, and be a part of realizing the vision for ourselves as a beloved community. Sometimes we get mad at or disappointed with All Souls, but All Souls is also where we are uplifted. All Souls is where we are also moved. All Souls is where we are also nourished. All Souls is also our spiritual home, imperfections and all. And that is why Amy and I financially support this covenantal community. I hope you can join us at this time of offering and giving. Right now, I'd like to invite Brenda Barron to the pulpit, and Brenda is going to introduce a special guest to our service this morning.
Thanks, Rob, for the stool. I needed that. Hi, I'm Brenda Barron. I know many of you. I've been here for 20 years, and I'm here right now because I also, for 2 years, have been on the staff at La Clínica de Pueblo, which, as you know, is our Share the Plate community organization this month. So thank you all for your support. I thank you from La Clínica, and I thank you as a member. I'm excited to introduce to you my colleague, our Chief of Programs and Community, Suyana Lingales-Barker. And I wanted to just say these few words because having been here for 20 years, it wasn't until 2 years ago I realized how many of the amazing things that La Clínica did that I never knew existed, but more so how we do it and how we at All Souls are in beloved community with La Clínica in ways I didn't realize. And so, until I worked there. So, but Suyana is going to tell you about it much better than I could. So here's Suyana.
Thank you. Thank you. It is not easy for me in the pulpit, but here we go. Thank you so much. I think All Souls Church has been such a great neighbor for us. We've been sharing so many celebrations. This has been our home for so many years for our posada. Also, you guys use our facility for the Sunday schools for a while during the renovation. For us, it's just an honor to be here, being considered again for your generosity. La Clínica has been this community helping the Latin community here. So today is the first day of the Hispanic Heritage Month. So we feel very honored to be here today on this day. We believe that healthcare is beyond access to a provider who provides you a clinical. We believe community is what makes healthcare important. With other community members in this area, we've been hosting the Latina community since the 80s. And we have been dealing with different waves of immigrants coming to the city. And I'd like to tell you a little story about the newest wave. You guys saw all the buses being thrown people here in a very violation of human rights, the way immigrants arrived here. Many organizations step in to help those immigrants. And La Clínica was the referral place for people living with HIV who speak only Spanish. So a limited English-speaking, newly arrived in the city, living with HIV, knew La Clínica was a home for them. The organizations on the field helping them knew they could refer to La Clínica. From our site in Mount Pleasant, who is a drop-in center, who is affirm LGBTQ health, through our capacity to provide healthcare here on the 15th Street, anyone arriving in this city with HIV was linked to care in 24 hours with our providers. And our viral load suppression is 80%. 80% of people living, taking care at La Clínica has a viral load suppression. Means they are going to live longer. they are going to live longer, and they are going to make our community safe, because suppression of viral load is a way to not transmit HIV. So it would not be possible without the generosity of all of you and all the community around us. So thank you so much to helping us to do that. For us, healthcare is a human right. We believe everyone should have access to healthcare and should be done in community. We should not do this just like with appointment with a doctor. Thank you so much. And we're going to be at the Pearson Hall later. Right? Yeah. So, it's the posada, and the celebrations. Thank you so much.
If you're in the sanctuary, the ushers will be passing the plate for our offering. You can also text All Souls by sending ASCU to 73256. Last reminder, you can put your connection card along with any financial contribution into the collection plate. If you're on Zoom, click the link in the chat, which will direct you to All Souls online giving. Thank you for your caring and generosity. Today's offering will now be gratefully taken and received.
And we invite you to rise in body and spirit now, singing our closing song from the great, legendary Beatles.
Beloveds, may our covenants guide us back to love, to loving one another. And if we experience this love even in dissent, it will help us experience a sense of peace that the world cannot take away from us because it abides in our heart. May that peace and love be what we leave this space with. Amen.